power in being a narrator, but there's also power in being a reader in a story. And we're going to talk today about point of view of a story and what power the narrator has and what power you have as the reader. Before we start this discussion, I want you to stop and write a journal. I want you to think about a specific time when you got in an argument or a fight with someone else, and later you told someone else about that fight who wasn't there. Now, this argument could be something that happened in person or over the phone, or even through Facebook or the internet or a Twitter fight. Maybe in the fight you said some things you regret, or you even threw punches. But the point is, I want you to think of a fight or argument that you had with someone that later you retold to someone else. Now, on this piece of paper, I want you to answer 5 questions. Question number 1, be very brief. You don't have to get into the background of everything that happened and why you were fighting and who threw the first punch. I want you to write about what was it that bothered you? How did you feel during the fight? Why did it matter to you? What did you feel was at stake? For number 2, I want you to answer, who did you tell about this fight? Remember, that person cannot be there when the fight happens. It's going to be your recounting of the story. And number 3, write down, how did that person react when you told them your story? Did they give you advice? Did they defend you? Did they rally the troops and go after that person? Did they blame you? Or did they show empathy and understanding? Now, number 4, think about this one. I want to know, would you have recounted your story differently if the person you were fighting with was there, listening? If so, how? If not, why not? Pause the video here and answer those first 4 questions. Now, I know some of you probably aren't pausing, but I really want you to. So pause and write some things down. All right, for the last question, and I want you to write this down also. This question is about power. I want you to think about what power you had as the storyteller, as the narrator. What power do you have in telling your version of this fight? And what power did your listener have in receiving this story from you? My classes are going to be turning in a handwritten journal on this because power dynamics are important in storytelling. The person who is telling the story has a power, but so does the person who is listening or reading the story. You have a power as a reader also. The narrator, the storyteller, obviously has a power because they're going to be telling you what they want you to know. I know that when I got in fights with my brothers and sisters, there were things that I didn't really want my mom to know, and so I wanted to be the one to tell her that story first. I knew that if my sister got to tell the story first, I would be in much more trouble than if I did. Even if I'm admitting to something that I did wrong, if the fight was entirely my fault, I can still frame it in a way that's showing remorse or create bias if I need to. The storyteller has the power in what they're going to give the reader. They have the power of sometimes cutting things out. In literature, a story can be told in 3 different ways. In first person, second person, or third person, and there are 3 different styles of third person storytelling. First person storytelling has words like I went to the store. In second person storytelling, the listener, the reader, is kind of a character too. When you went to the store, you forgot to take money, so you weren't able to get the milk. That's second person. You. In third person, the narrator is not a character in the story. They're outside of the story, telling the reader about the story. For example, Harry Potter went to the store. He went to get milk because Hermione was thirsty, and the narrator's not in that story at all. But there are different options a writer has in how that narrator is going to tell the story, which characters they can read the minds of. These 3 styles of third person are objective, limited, and omniscient. An objective third-person point of view does not get into the mind of any of the characters. They're telling the entire story without revealing any thoughts from any character. A limited third-person narrator can tell the thoughts of one character or a few characters, but not all of the characters, perhaps just the good guys. And the third style from a third-person point of view is omniscient. And an omniscient narrator can actually read the minds of all of the characters and will tell you what everyone's thinking. Now, for all 3 of these types of point of view, there are benefits and limitations. When you're doing a close reading of a story, you should consider 3 parts of the point of view. 1, what is the point of view in this? 2, why is the author using this point of view? And number 3, what is the function of this point of view? What benefits am I getting? And what limitations do I have? Now, the narrator isn't the only one with power, because you as a listener, you as a reader, get to have some power in the story also. So for fun, we're gonna look at the young adult novel, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. This was written by Jeff Kinney. It's a book with a surprisingly high Lexile score, despite that it was obviously written for young adults. I'm picking at random a story from inside. Greg is our main character. Friday. I finally knocked Rowley off the big wheel today, but it didn't happen the way I expected. I was trying to hit him in the shoulder, but I missed, and the football went under the front tire. Rowley tried to break his fall by sticking out his arms, but he landed pretty hard on his left hand. I figured he'd just shake it off and get right back on the bike, but he didn't. Christmas vacation is over and now we're back at school. And you remember Rowley's big wheel accident? Well, he broke his hand and now he has to wear a cast. And today everyone was crowding around him like he was a hero or something. I tried to cash in on some of Rowley's new popularity, but it totally backfired. I'm the one who broke his hand. You meanie. At lunch, a bunch of girls invited Rowley over to their table so they could feed him. What really ticks me off about that is that Rowley is right-handed and it's his left hand that's broken, so he can feed himself just fine. So let's answer those 3 questions. Number 1, what is the point of view being used here? The pronouns really give this away. I, me. This story is told from Greg's point of view, who's our narrator, so this is a first-person point of view. Because it's in first person, it's really easy to see his tone and bias here. There's some hints here about tone when he says everyone's crowding around Rowley like he was a hero or something. And he says, what really ticks me off? We can tell in some places that his tone is confused and that he's frustrated and quite annoyed. He thinks Rowley is cashing in on the girl's attention on him. So the narrator is telling you the story. We have power too. We get to question and judge and find meaning. So let's question our narrator. A clever element to this book is that we have an unreliable narrator. The narrator's telling you his point of view, but he's obviously biased. We get to question the things that he's telling us and determine what's significant. You as the listener or the reader, you get to judge. Do you like this narrator? Now, as a reader with power, I'm gonna tell you that I think Greg's a bit of a jerk. It's easy to judge his decisions are selfish, unsympathetic, he's narcissistic. And part of the fun of reading this young adult fiction is being able to judge him throughout the entire book. You really feel for Rowley by the end of the book, and when Rowley has his success, in some ways, that's our success because we've been secretly rooting for Rowley the whole time, because quite frankly, Greg is a dick. Now, there are benefits and limitations to these 3 different point of view types. 1, in first-person point of view, a benefit is that it's intimate. By hearing a story from the source with the I's and me's, it develops that intimacy between reader and narrator. And their stories are credible. This is from their perspective, and this is what happened to them. First-person narrators also have the ability to express bias and opinions, and they can do it subtly too, even just through adjectives. I could say, my father has a booming voice, or I could say, my father has a strong voice. Even though in some ways both of those adjectives are similar, they're different. A booming voice is ominous and scary, perhaps threatening in some way. But a strong voice is a positive characteristic. Being strong, being healthy, being firm. The narrator's choice of adjectives and verbs help frame this bias. Be skeptical of a first-person point of view. Remember, you're hearing it from their side. And when my kids come to me to tell me about fights that they have, I know to be skeptical of both of my kids and their stories because I know they're going to frame it in a way that makes themselves a victim or a hero. So now that we've discussed the power of a narrator and the 3 different types of point of view and the power as a reader, read a short fiction piece and determine the function of this narrator. All right, you got this.